One in three home sales in the UK fall through, causing months in delays and costing homeowners up to £2,000 per fall through. Estate agents and solicitors will just shrug their shoulders and say, nothing we could have done. But they are wrong. Over the last 15 years, I've sold over 500 homes for clients, and I've bought and sold more than 100 of my own properties as well. And in that time, I've learned that in fact, most fall throughs are preventable. And here's how. So before I accept an offer, I put buyers through a simple 4-step process that you can use too. And once they complete it, the chances of the sale falling through go way down. I've done this for years on my own properties, and I do it for my clients as well, which is why our sales fall through a fraction as often as estate agent sales, and why we get results and feedback like these. So how does this work? Well, let me set this up properly. So when you agree a sale with a buyer, most people think that a deal is just the price that you agree, but that's where they go wrong, because the price is only half of it. The other half of a deal are the terms you agree, meaning the deadlines and conditions. And that missing half of the puzzle is why so many sellers and buyers run into problems and fall throughs later on. So like we've said, 1 in 3 sales fall through after they've been agreed. But here's the other stat that most people don't know. So in terms of delays, the average time from accepting an offer to it exchanging, which basically when it reaches the finish line, is 17 weeks. Insane. But here's why I wanted to show you this first. So to some extent, these two things go hand in hand, meaning if your sale drags on longer, it is also more likely to fall through. Now, this is a huge problem and a threat for most sellers, but for us as smart sellers, it's an opportunity, because the opposite is also true. So using the 4 steps in this video, we can drastically reduce the chance of our sale falling through and speed it up at the same time. And this all comes from setting the terms of the deal. So how do we set the terms and deadlines and actually have people stick to them? Well, let's jump into this 4-step process, and I'll show you exactly how it works. And the first step is perhaps the most important, because without it, any terms you try and set are going to get completely ignored, and you'll end up with an ordinary slow sale and these higher fall through rates. So step number 1, years ago, this is how I learned this. So years ago, I was selling a property and I wanted the cash back out of it for another opportunity. So I accepted a pretty low offer from someone to get it sold more quickly, which meant the buyer was getting a really good deal. So in my mind, he should have rushed it through before we changed our mind. But actually, the opposite happened. The guy was slow, they fussed about the legals, and they even tried to chip away at the price. And it made no sense to me because they were getting such a bargain. But eventually, I realized what was actually going on. And the buyer actually thought he was overpaying. And so I learned that because the buyer already felt like he was getting a bad deal, it kind of meant he was in charge. And it meant I, as the seller, had no control over the sale. And we don't want that. And so step number 1 is what I call setting the frame. And here's how we do it. When the offer is at a level we are prepared to accept, we get our agent to communicate this clearly to the buyer. We say, we've priced our home realistically, and we think we can get more if we hold out, but we're prepared to work with this price on these conditions. That's it. So we are setting our stall out effectively. Now you will see this is not contentious. This is very reasonable. And so most serious buyers will understand it. But we've just set the frame that we believe the buyer's getting a good deal. And in return, we want to name the terms. So let's move on to step 2. And it's important because if we miss this one, or if we get it wrong, everyone's going to ignore us completely, or we might even scare our buyer off if we aren't careful. So step number 2. Imagine you've got a friend you've not seen for a while. Step number 2. Imagine you've got a friend you've not seen for a while and you want to catch up and go out for some lunch. Well, you don't pick a restaurant and say, I can't wait to see you. I'll be there in 8 to 12 weeks. It's like, if you want this meetup to actually happen, you pick a day. And it's the same with house sales. So step number 2, we are going to set our deadline for completion day. But there's an important balance we've got to strike here, because if we go too aggressive and set a deadline that's too soon, everyone ignores it because they don't think it will happen. But if we set it too far away, everyone ignores it because there's no urgency. And so the date we pick has got to be realistic enough they can believe it can happen, but urgent enough that they actually need to do something. So here's a bit of a guideline that you might find useful. So for cash buyers, I'm thinking about 8 weeks to exchange. That's cash buyers with no chain. Mortgage buyers with no chain, perhaps 10 weeks. Chain buyers, well, it depends. It depends partly on the chain length. For example, there could be one other sale in the chain, or there could be 5. It depends on the progress so far as well. They might be months into this and they're all at the finish line, or the chain could just be getting started. And so the answer is you need to get your agents to get the facts so that you can set a realistic date. It will normally fall between 8 to 16 weeks, something like that. I know that's a wide range, but it depends on that stuff above. Now, if you think these sound like a long time and you're like, this guy's meant to be the expert, well, I'm afraid to say these are actually quite ambitious in today's world. So the stat on this, only 29% of sales exchange within 12 weeks. And the unfortunate thing here is this study was actually from June 2024. And you can see the trend line. It's getting worse over time. So it's probably lower than 29% now. And for me, like I would love to set shorter deadlines, but just speaking from years of experience and having dealt with thousands of solicitors, you start running into that problem where people don't think it will happen. And so they just ignore you. And so what have we done so far? Well, we've got our date range, but like with the restaurant example, we don't want to set a vague kind of 8 weeks from now date. We want a specific one. And so this is how we get one. We open the calendar, we skip forward however many weeks that you've decided, and we pick the next Friday after that. And I would set that as the target date. Why did we do that? Well, first is because most sales complete on a Friday, so it makes it easier for your agent and solicitors to go along with. Secondly, going for the Friday after the kind of 8 or 10 weeks or whatever, going for the Friday after rather than the one before is just a bit more charitable to everyone working to these deadlines. And so again, it just makes it a bit more likely that it will happen. And so we have our date. The final part of this step is communicating it to our buyer and getting them on board with it. And this part is really simple. So all we do is we go back to our script from earlier where we're speaking with the agent, and we just build very slightly on this. So like we said before, we think the buyer's getting a good price and it's realistic, and we think we might get more if we hold out, but we're prepared to work with this price on the basis that, and then this is the new stuff, assuming there are no nasty surprises, we're working towards completion on date. That's it. That's all we've got to add for step 2. Again, this feels very reasonable, doesn't it? We're giving it to them at a good price. We've picked a realistic date. We're not being unrealistic. We've said assuming no nasty surprises. So it's hard to say we are being unreasonable. So all good there, and we move on to the next step. And this one is important because if we stop here and we just say our date and speak it into existence, nothing will happen. Everyone will still just ignore us. So that's why we need to go further again and agree something else. So step number 3. Now, when you accept an offer is when people start getting confused. We've got this complicated conveyancing process, and suddenly there's loads of people involved. There's solicitors and mortgage brokers and lenders and surveyors and sometimes even chains on top. And it means it becomes really hard to tell what progress even looks like and what we should even expect of a buyer. But just forget all of that kind of confusing stuff for a second, and let me just explain like our goal here in really simple terms. So it's the equivalent of like, imagine you hired a contractor to build an extension for you, and it's a 12-week project. Okay, if you get 6 weeks into this project and materials haven't been ordered and the groundwork's not been started, you already know 12 weeks ain't happening. That's what most house sales are like, though. People set this rough deadline, but then the most basic first steps don't happen. And so immediately most sales fall behind and you're off track, and most people won't even realize this. So what we want is more like this. With our 12-week extension project, imagine you hit the end of week 1 and the materials are ordered, you've got pallets showing up in the driveway, and there's 4 guys on site digging up the patio. Well, now you're feeling pretty confident, and that's the whole idea for us here with our sale. So step number 3 is about setting 3 specific milestones for the first 7 to 10 days. Okay, so milestone one, you would be amazed how often after you accept an offer, buyers spend 2 weeks shopping around and comparing solicitor quotes, then another week waiting for the welcome pack, then it takes a few evenings to get around to filling it in, and suddenly you're 3 or 4 weeks in and nothing's even happened yet. So our first milestone is if they're buying the house, they need to pick a solicitor and get them instructed in the next 2 working days. It's like that, okay? So milestone number 2. Now, solicitors are paid to go through a ton of stuff for the buyer about the property and the area. The thing is, they have to order that stuff from other places. And this stuff, this information, is called searches. And these come back from different companies. There's a reason I'm explaining this. It comes back from water and drainage and the coal board. And one of the places it comes back from is the local authority. Now, guess who is not that fast at coming back with stuff? It's your local authority. So in some places, just getting the searches back once you've ordered them can take 6 to 8 weeks. Now, if a buyer takes 6 weeks to even order that stuff, then our timeline is obviously blown and nothing's even gone wrong. This sort of stuff, this lack of coordination though, is why the average sale takes 17 weeks. You can start seeing why these crazy timelines emerge. So really simple solution. Milestone number 2 is search is paid for in 5 to 7 days, ideally 5, and then ordered, ideally in 7 days, 10 days at a push. Okay. Milestone number 3. Now, as you know, houses are pretty expensive, which means you need a lot of money to buy them. And for most people, that means using a mortgage. Now, mortgage applications can take a few weeks as well. And so like with the searches, the sooner we start that clock ticking, the better. And applying for the mortgage is not something that should take a month. It should take like a morning to get the ball rolling, and then maybe a few working days to get the full application in. Okay, so for mortgage buyers, I want the mortgage applied for in the first week as well. If a buyer can't do that, I'm thinking they aren't serious, or maybe they're worried that they're going to struggle to get the money. Obviously, if you have a cash buyer, this doesn't apply, but I want them to book their survey in the first few days instead. So why is this all important, these milestones? Well, if we hit all 3 milestones in the first 7 to 10 days, we get 3 big wins. So number 1, we cut out weeks of dead time, obviously, like the examples I talked through. Secondly, our buyer now has real skin in the game as well, because the searches and the mortgage application or survey might have cost them 500 quid, and a buyer who's put hundreds of pounds into a purchase is way less likely to withdraw than someone who's not. Third, and this is the one that most people miss, we have started to create this sense of certainty and momentum around the sale. Things are happening. This is happening. This buyer is going to be in the house in 12 weeks. And so they're not going to be on Rightmove this weekend looking at other houses. It's all going through and fast. And creating that sense of certainty and momentum in the first week of the sale helps prevent so many problems later on and makes things so much easier and faster. So the final thing for this step is, how do we lay out these terms? Well, we do this all really simply with our agent again by just adding a few lines onto our script from earlier. So, like we said earlier, we're saying we think the buyer's getting a good price, but we're prepared to work with it on the basis that, assuming there are no nasty surprises, we're working towards completion on date. This is the new stuff. And so we know these buyers are serious. And so we're all on track for this date. In the first 7 days, we want to see solicitors instructed, searches ordered, and mortgage applied for, or survey booked if they're a cash buyer. And then we say, if they're happy with that, we're prepared to accept their offer today. We'll stop viewings immediately, and we'll mark the property as sold once those milestones are ticked off. Sound fair enough? How reasonable is that? Now, if your buyer doesn't agree to that stuff, I'm starting to ask why. If they have genuine, honest needs about target dates and why a different one makes sense, why they're not going to hit milestones in the set days, I'm okay to hear them out. And if they're communicating and the explanations sound reasonable, I'm okay working with them on that and compromising. But if communication goes weird, or they're just saying they won't commit to those things, I'm confused why. All of that stuff is normal. If you want the house as a buyer, you've got to do this at some point. So why not now? And in that case, if they are refusing, I would really push back. And that's where, depending how long you've been waiting for a buyer, maybe you think about actually not going with them. You obviously be the judge of that based on how long you've been waiting for a buyer, how many other options you've got, how important this buyer is to you. But that's the time I start thinking about not going with them. Now, let's say they agree to our milestones and everything that we're looking at in the first week, and we move on to step 4. And this is important because, again, if we miss this one, it has all been in vain. Okay, so step number 4, think about this like work. If you have a job, you're getting paid at the end of every month, which is great, but you don't just get paid regardless. There's things you're meant to be doing, and there's a boss who's checking up on you. And if you're slacking, there are consequences. They're going to crack the whip somehow and bring you back in line. And if you don't get back in line, then you get the sack. So in other words, employers have consequences for employees. And it's got to be the same for us with this sale. So we've got to keep people accountable to what we've agreed. And if they don't do it, there have to be consequences. That's what makes them stick to what was agreed. And so here's how I keep everyone accountable in week 1 of a sale without sounding pushy. So first of all, I want updates every couple of days during the first week. Just tell the agent that's what you expect. And it's not chasing for the sake of it. It's just simple confirmations about the little steps along the way that build up to our 3 milestones. We want to know that they've picked their solicitor, that they've signed up and sent their ID, that they've booked an appointment with their broker for Tuesday. So we're starting to see little ticks appear, and we're all feeling the progress and the momentum, and we're getting used to working together, and it's all going great. Now, what if that doesn't happen and we miss our milestones? Do we just pull out as soon as we go past day 7? Well, here is my rule. It depends on communication. If the buyer is communicating clearly, saying, here's what we've done, here's what we're waiting on, here's the date it will happen, then fine. Delays do happen. And I've found that a communicative buyer is usually a committed one. And so in most cases, I'm happy to be patient and extend timelines a little in those cases. But if they go cold and days go by with no updates, they're missing milestones, and the agent can't get a straight answer, that is an early warning sign, because we were really clear from day 1 what needed to happen. So if we hit day 7 to 10 with no progress and poor communication or vague information, I'm usually ready to tell the agent to restart viewings. And if nothing changes and a few more days go by, I'm ready to walk away. Why? Because if they're ignoring terms now, they will be slow. And slow sales are the ones that fall through. Now, just so you know, if you end up in this position where your buyer's not corresponding, they're going really slow, you've told the agent to put it back on market, you're going to be thinking, do we pull out? And you'll kind of feel like you don't want to lose the sale. Like, I've been here many times. I don't want to lose it. And we kind of tell ourselves they might come good. I've already told the agent to restart viewings again, but the problem is, if your agent has this as a sale agreed, they aren't really trying to get you more viewings. It is a headache for them to do the work to get viewings. It's a headache to tell buyers that, yes, you can see it, but there's kind of someone else already buying it. It's like, it's a mess. And so in most cases, even if you tell the agent to start viewings, you're really unlikely to find another buyer. And so you're truly in the hands of the person who's already buying it and is not coming back to you. And for me, I didn't want to let a sale drag on with a buyer who's not showing real obvious progress or communication. So I'm ready to walk. And last thing here, if I do walk away, I feel good about it in those situations. I don't feel like I've lost a sale. I feel like I've avoided a future fall through that could have taken months to actually happen. So when we hold buyers accountable to what we agreed, all in all, either we get a serious buyer who commits early and we're off to a flying start together with a lower chance of falling through, or we spot and avoid a time waster, saving weeks or months of stress and wasted time and expense. It's literally a win-win. So this 4-step process has saved me a ton of money and months of time and boatloads of mental well-being over the years. And I really hope it helps you as well. Just quickly, you may have watched this and thought, this makes complete sense, but there's way more to this than I expected. Well, if you feel like that, the problem is this This whole video is just one step in a long journey. And if this feels like a lot of work for you, I've been selling homes faster and for full value for years. We do this all day, every day. You've seen some of the case studies and client results I shared earlier. So if you just like my help, just selling your home for you, we have a service that might be a really good fit for you. We call it our accelerated sales service. Just so you know, we are more expensive than using an estate agent, but we are really, really good. And so if you do want to learn more and potentially apply to have me and my team do this for you, click the link in the description and take a look. Either way, I really hope this has been helpful, and I will see you soon.